Beginning with the paper solution of the MCQ paper. The code for this paper is 0610. It is the second variant 22 for the extended curriculum. This paper is for 40 marks and the time duration to solve this paper will be 45 minutes. Starting with the first question, we are looking at all living things can remove toxic materials and other substances that are in excess of requirement. What is this process called? This particular question comes from the chapter 1 where we are looking at the life processes, which is Mrs. Gren as a short form that we learn. Mrs. Gren stands for movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, and nutrition. All of the definitions are provided to you in the IGCSE syllabus. Understanding the definition where we are looking at the highlighted keywords over here. So the keywords that we are going to look out for is to remove toxic materials which are in excess of requirements. Which substances will be toxic? Something which is going to affect the pH of the blood or the temperature of the body is considered to be toxic. So generally when we talk about toxic products, we refer to as urea, creatinine, uric acid, etc. So throwing out urea is done by the kidneys and the process is called as excretion. So according to that, we are going to mark our answer, which is going to be option B. Moving to the next part, we are going to two animals have got identical sequence of amino acids. Understanding the sequences of amino acids, we know that these particular sequences are present in the DNA codes. So the DNA is a double helical structure and there are nitrogen bases which are coding in the form of A in pairing with T and C in pairing with G. So when we are understanding that there is an identical sequence of amino acid in one of the proteins, that means it is showing you some kind of similarities, right? So what does this indicate about these animals? The options which I'm reading now, they have been eating the same type of food. As we know that when we eat food, it is digested to smaller proteins, and again those things will not affect the DNA of our body. So option A is absolutely not correct. They have been exposed to substances that can cause mutation. But here they are already saying that two animals have identical sequence of amino acids, so there is no relation to mutation. They may be the members of the same genus. No, they have to be member of the same species. So answer here is definitely that they have a similar group of ancestors or they share an ancestor. Coming to the third question, the diagram shows some tissues in the parts of a plant root. So we are looking at the keyword over here, which is the tissues. So tissues, as we can understand, it is tissue is made up of cells and cells will merge to form tissue. Tissues will merge to form organ. Organs will form the organ system. And we are looking at the final thing as an organism. Giving you an example of this. Suppose we are looking at the structure of the stomach. Okay, we are looking at a tiny cell over here. These cells will merge to form the tissues. Okay, many tissues will group up to make the whole organ. This stomach as an organ is a part of the digestive system. And the digestive system is one of the many systems which is present in an organism. So here they are talking about how many different tissues are present over here. So the answer that we are looking for is 4. How are we looking at 4? So we are looking at the root hair cells. Then we have the cells which are grouping up over here to make the inner parts of the root. Then we are looking at the epidermal cells over here. So there are combination of cells which is making the tissue epidermis. Then we are looking at the vascular bundles over here, that is the xylem and the phloem. Okay, so this is how we are looking at the 4 as an answer for this question. Moving ahead, we are going to the fourth question. For the fourth question, we are again looking at the length of the mitochondrion. Now, what is a mitochondrion? I'm sure you know that. Mitochondrion basically is present in the cell. There is a nucleus. There is a structure identified like this. This is called as the mitochondrion. This is the powerhouse of the cell. Why? Because it is the site of respiration. Respiration is one which will derive energy for the body. The length of the mitochondrion in the photograph is 15 millimeters, and the actual length of the mitochondrion is 3 micrometers. We have to look at the details over here, that there are two different units which are provided. One is in millimeters, one is in micrometers. So there needs to be a conversion. As we know, 1 micrometer is equal to 0.001 millimeter. So the conversion is going to be accordingly, and we are talking about the formula for magnification. So the formula for magnification will be, okay, magnification is equal to image upon actual length. Okay, so the actual length provided to us is 3 micrometers, which we have to convert it as 0.003, okay, millimeters, and the photograph is 15. So 15 divided by 0.003. So that is what you're going to get an answer, which will be into 5,000. The magnification is always written as X. So this is what we are looking at. The answer for the question is going to be C. Moving ahead, we are looking at the diagram shows some cells. These cells, the key word over here that you can identify is the cilia. For any kind of cell that we are looking at, the cell does have an outer membrane. This is called as the cell membrane. Then we are looking at the inner part over here. This is a jelly-like substance which is called as the cytoplasm, okay, which is already labeled over here. The main part inside is the nucleus, which contains the genetic information, and there are these tiny hair-like structures that are mentioned as cilia. Now, cilia is a part of the respiratory system. Cilia is a part of the respiratory system. Okay, so what is the function of the cilia? The function of the cilia is to move the mucus away from the lungs. Okay, and we are talking about that the respiratory system consists of the nose or the nasal passage. Then we are looking at this part over here. This is called as the trachea. Then moving down to the individual lung, we are looking at the structures called as the bronchi or the bronchus. And then there are lungs. In the lungs, there are bronchioles. And at the end of each bronchiole, we are looking at the grape-like structures. These are called as the alveoli. Okay, so where are these cells found? So as we understood the whole process, we are looking at the cells are found in the C answer, that is bronchus. Okay, now which statement about diffusion is correct? So diffusion, if we remember the definition, diffusion is the movement of ions from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration down the concentration gradient until an equilibrium is reached. This is a random movement of particles. Why are the particles moving? Because of the kinetic energy, right? More the closely spaced, close they are, the more the banging will occur or the collisions will occur, more kinetic energy is going to be created and they are going to be drifted apart. What do we understand by the term equilibrium? So equilibrium means we are saying that they are so far away from each other that they do not have the energy, they do not come back and collide, and there is no more kinetic energy present in them. Okay, so this is what we are saying is diffusion. So which statement about diffusion is correct? So the process requires energy from respiration. No, that is active transport. The particles must cross a cell membrane. Again, that is either by osmosis or by active transport. The net movement of particles is up the concentration gradient, and it is a process involves the random movement of particles. So your answer obviously will be D. We have just discussed this whole thing. So your answer is going to be D. Okay. The diagram shows the uptake of mineral ions by the root hair cells. Which type of molecule is labeled X? So as we can understand that, X is a root hair cell. This is the cell membrane. We require energy. We just did the definition of diffusion and now we are moving to the definition of active transport. So for active transport, we are saying that it is the movement of molecules or ions from a region of lower concentration to a region of higher concentration, somewhere where there is no space and you want to get inside, or rather we say there is very little space and you want to get inside, you will have to apply a lot of energy to push and get inside. Okay, so that's exactly what we are looking at. Which type of molecule is labeled X? Because the word energy is given over here, we understand that they are giving us a hint about active transport over here. So we are looking at which type of molecule is labeled X. For active transport to occur, they require what is called as the protein carriers. So the molecule X is a protein. Okay. Now, coming to the eighth question, the bases on one of the strands of the DNA molecule have the sequence shown. Adenine, adenine is how you read it, but for the exam purpose, you always need to remember A, A, T, C, T, G, and the bonding we have already done earlier, A to T and C to G. What is the corresponding sequence of bases in the other stand? So you just need to remember the pairings. Okay, so A will always bond with T, T, A, G, A, C. So this is the base pairing that we are looking at. As you can identify, T, T, A, G, A, C. So your answer is D. Coming to this question about photosynthesis. In photosynthesis experiment, a plant is left in bright sunlight for several hours. A leaf is then removed from the plant and tested for starch using iodine solution. As we remember, the iodine solution, its initial color is yellow-brown. On reacting with starch, it is going to get converted to blue-black. For this, we are remembering the four-stage procedure which is needed for the iodine to react in this process. So the first stage we had said that the leaf is put in boiling water to break the cell membrane. Second, we are going to dip it in ethanol. So the chlorophyll dissolves. Now the leaf has become very crisp. Okay, so we need to put it in lukewarm water again to soften the leaf. And the fourth thing, you are placing it on a white tile. On this white tile, we are going to put iodine solution, and with this you will see the color change as blue-black. But where is the iodine going to react? Only in the green area where the starch has been made. Okay, so the plant by the process of photosynthesis makes glucose. But since glucose is highly reactive, it is converted to starch grains and stored in that form. So here it is going to be present only in the green area. In the white area, there is going to be no starch. Okay. So the color change that you can see will only be in the lower or the periphery of that. So your answer for the ninth question will be C. Moving to the 10th one. An experiment was carried out to investigate the effect of enzyme action. The graph shows the results. On the x-axis and the y-axis, you need to identify the labels for the same. Now, the keyword again over here is to effect of the pH on the enzyme action. Action means we are looking at the observation in the form of the rate of reaction. Okay, so what are we looking at? Obviously, on the x-axis, we are going to put the pH, which is called as the independent variable. Independent variable is basically what you start your experiment with, and the observations will always come on the y-axis, which is called as the dependent variable. Okay, so here we are looking at the x-axis and the y-axis. So the x-axis is obviously pH. So you have your option as the rate of reaction because we are looking at the enzyme action over here. Okay, so your answer is pH and the rate of reaction. So your answer in this MCQ is going to be A. Moving to the 11th one. 4 test tubes were set up in this diagram. In which test tube is starch digested more quickly? We are looking at the word digestion. For digestion, we are looking at the usage of enzymes. As we know that the enzyme is a three-dimensional structure which has this point over here. This is called as the, it is called as the active site. Now, for the product to be formed, you will require certain important conditions. So, what conditions are we looking at over here? The conditions that we are looking at will be optimum. Optimum means the one where it works the best. So, optimum temperature and pH, correct? So, as you can see in this whole question, they are showing you the different temperatures. One is at 15 degrees Celsius and the other is at 35 degrees Celsius. Now, we understand that the more the temperature, the better it is for the enzymes to collide and to bind with the substrate and to make the products. So let's look at the scenario. Here it is 15 degrees Celsius. 15 degrees Celsius and the word given to you is amylase. Amylase is something that works in human digestive system, which ideally has an optimum temperature of 37 degrees Celsius, which is the optimum temperature for human beings. So here when we are looking at 15 degrees Celsius, the reactions cannot occur at all. Okay, so these two are ruled out. Coming to the option C and D, where you can see that there is 35 degrees Celsius, very close to the optimum temperature, so the work can be done. But here, one place we have boiled amylase. What do you understand by the term boiled amylase? So when we are looking at boiled, boiled means that it is going to be boiled means it is going to be denatured. The enzyme is denatured. Okay, and because of that, what happens is that the reaction cannot take place over here, and we are looking at the answer, which will be C, where the other is kept in dark. After a few hours, which color would hydrogen carbonate indicator solution be in each of the test tube. Now, when we are looking at the leaves over here, we are understanding that these leaves, when they are kept in the black paper means they are telling you that it is kept in the dark. What exactly happens in the light and in the dark? We need to understand this first. So, in the light, we know that the plant is doing the process of photosynthesis where it is going to take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. That does not mean it does not respire. It is going to respire simultaneously, but the uptake of carbon dioxide is more and the giving out of oxygen is more. In the night, it respires. So when it is respiring, what happens? It is taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. So as we know that hydrogen carbonate indicator is sensitive to this particular thing, you can see here I have kept this slide where the concentration of carbon dioxide, if it is highest, okay, the color is going to be yellow. And we are looking at that when it is lowest, it is going to be purple. When will the carbon dioxide be the highest? In the night time when the plant is respiring. Okay. So coming back to the question paper, here we are looking at in which test tube is it going to, what color is it going to show. So in this question, we are looking at light, it is going to be purple, and in the dark, it is going to be yellow because the carbon dioxide has been given out, right? So this is the whole question that we are looking at. Coming to the 13th one, the diagram shows the surface view of the part of the epidermis of a leaf. How many guard cells are present? So as you can see that this is the lower epidermis. This is the lower epidermis where the guard cells and the stomata are present. How many guard cells are present? As we can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we are looking at the answer is C. The guard cells are 6. The guard cells will become turgid. Okay, the guard cells will become turgid and result in the opening of the gap inside this gap, which is called as the stomata. Correct? So this is the stomata, and the outer part that you can see, this is called as the guard cells. Okay, each stomata has got 2 guard cells, so accordingly your answer is going to be 6. Moving from here, we are going to, the diagram shows the part of the alimentary canal and the associated organs. Where does most water absorption take place? So, identifying the labels first, you are looking at the D, which is the stomach. In the stomach, there is digestion of the proteins into polypeptides. Then the C, we are looking at a large intestine. In the large intestine, as we can see in the textbook, it is written that the remaining water is reabsorbed. Okay. Then A, we are looking at the structure which is called as a pancreas, very dynamic structure in the body, which is an endocrine gland as well as an exocrine gland. Okay, and we are looking at the B part over here, which is the small intestine. So the most amount of water is reabsorbed in the B part, which is the small intestine. Remaining water is reabsorbed in the large intestine. Do not get confused with this sentence. The diagram shows the large molecules are changing into smaller molecules. You can identify that, there are different types of molecules by the shape provided over here. They can be fats, carbohydrates, proteins, etc. Since they are not of the same time, we can understand that by the shapes. Now, when the bonds are broken between each of them, this process is called as digestion. Okay, so the definition of digestion is breaking down of large insoluble food particles into small soluble particles. Okay, so you can see that the bonds are broken and now they are ready to be digested by their respective enzymes. For the carbohydrates, we have seen in this paper earlier, for the carbohydrate, you need the enzyme amylase. For proteins, you need protease. And for fat, you require lipase. Okay. Moving to the next question, 16. The diagram shows a newly planted seedling and the same seeds in few hours after being planted. What is the correct explanation for the change in the appearance of the leaves? As you can see that, here the leaves are nice and holding its shape. Here the leaves are drooping down. They have become smaller in size. They do not look as good as the first picture. So the correct explanation over here we are looking at is that transpiration has maybe taken place. Okay, so what is transpiration? Transpiration is the movement of water vapor through from the cells of the leaf through the stomata. Okay, so when the water vapor is leaving this particular plant, it is going to become flaccid. So if you can see a plant cell, this is the cell wall. The cell membrane will be pushed inside or will be taken inside, and the vacuole is also become smaller in size. So this is where we are looking at that the plant has become flaccid. So transpiration is faster than water uptake by the root hair. So the cells have become flaccid. The first one itself is correct. If we had to look at the reverse condition over here, that if I have put water in this particular soil now, after some hours it is going to become in this condition again. What is this condition called? This is called as turgid. Okay, the water will travel from the root into the leaves. If you look at the cell again, it is going to be pushed back to its normal position. Okay, and the water will be filled in the part which is called as the cell sap. Okay, and it will push the shape and the cell will become turgid again. So this is the condition in the question that you can see is the flaccidity condition. Coming to the 17th question. 17th question, we are looking at translocation. So looking at the diagram over here, translocation, as we understand, is the movement of sucrose and amino acids from the source to the sink. Who is taking these nutrients? They are taken by the phloem. They are taken by the vascular bundle, which is the phloem. So when we are looking at in summers when there are long daylight hours, the plants can do the process of photosynthesis, which is the reaction of carbon dioxide and water, which requires sunlight. So it can produce its carbohydrate. So the food is made here in the leaf, which will become the source, and it is stored in the lower parts or some other parts of the plant, which becomes the sink. But when we are looking at in spring and winter, when the leaves have shed out and the new leaves are coming back again, in these conditions, what happens? The food where it was stored, okay, that part becomes the source and the other parts become the sink. That means the new plants growing and all that will become the sink, the new leaves or the new flowers, etc. So coming back to the question. Translocation is the movement of sucrose and amino acids in the phloem tissue of the plant from source to sink. That's exactly what I said. That's the definition of translocation for your further reference. Which organ acts as a source? So here we are looking at the answer is D, which is your storage root. Okay. Which component of the blood produces antibodies? So, for antibodies, we need to understand that there are two types of white blood cells. One is the lymphocyte and the other one is the phagocyte. So, how do you identify the difference between these two? So the lymphocyte will have a bigger nucleus and the phagocyte will have a lobed nucleus. That is how you identify them. So which component produces antibodies? So what are antibodies made for? So there are structures on the microorganism bodies which are called as the antigen. Okay, what are antibodies then? Antibodies are basically structures which will block this antigen from entering into an organ, and these particular structures are made by the lymphocyte. So your answer for the 18th question is A. Moving to the 19th one. What do shunt vessels connect? For this we need to understand that there are arteries. From arteries they form what is called as the arterioles. From these arterioles, they are branched into tinier things which are called as the capillaries. Capillaries will merge to form veins. So basically, first there will be a venule, then there will be a vein. Okay, so what do shunt vessels connect? So they are going to connect the arterioles to the venules. Shunt vessels basically are a bed of capillaries. Okay, now which graph shows how the pressure inside the lung changes when taking one breath in. For the breathing in process, we need to remember a flow chart. Okay, so the flow charts is for inhaling, we are looking at the diaphragm contracts, the external intercostal muscles contract, rib cage moves up and out, volume increases, pressure decreases, and the air moves in. If you remember this flowchart, you will never make a mistake in any kind of a inhaling exhaling question. So looking at the 20th question, the graph shows how the pressure inside the lung changes when taking in one breath. Okay, so if you look at the graph, your answer is going to be B, because here the pressure decreases. We just mentioned that. Okay, so the pressure decreases and the volume increases. So here you can see that the pressure is decreasing and then the inhaling process will start. So your answer is definitely B. Coming to the 21st question. Some features that help to defend the body against pathogens are listed. So that's mucus, skin, stomach acid, and phagocytosis. Mucus is present in the respiratory tract. Skin is the external covering for the body. Then we are looking at the stomach acid, which is the hydrochloric acid present to destroy any microorganisms. And then the phagocytosis, which is done by the white blood cell phagocytes. Which features can prevent the phagocytes entering the body tissues right at the interior top level defense. Okay, so the top level defense, obviously the mucus. Then we are looking at the skin, which will not let the pathogens to enter inside at all. Then I just mentioned that if there are any pathogens entering, the hydrochloric acid is going to take care of this. From here, if it crosses this channel, then it may enter into the blood and then the phagocytes will start to act. But before that, these are the three line of defense. So we are looking at the answer over here for the 21st question is going to be B. Coming to the 22nd. The diagram shows an apparatus used to measure the rate of respiration in the germinating seeds. As the seed requires, the bubble of colored water moves along the glass tube. Now, The germinating seeds again are going to respire. When they respire, they take in oxygen and they will give out carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is going to be absorbed by the soda lime as already mentioned over here. So we are going to look at overall there is going to be a drop in the pressure. Okay, so what happens is that the bubble will move towards the test tube. The temperature is increased from 20 to 40. Okay, so what is happening? What happens to the movement of the bubble if the temperature increases? The bubble moves more quickly towards the seed at 40 degrees Celsius than at 20 degrees Celsius. I have already mentioned in this explanation itself that as the temperature increases or comes close to the optimum temperature, there will be more kinetic energy and there will be more respiration. Okay, so we are looking at the answer for the 22nd question is going to be A. Which statement about lactic acid is correct? Now, where is this lactic acid made? When an organism is doing aerobic activity, the organism takes in oxygen and gives out carbon dioxide. But there will be one point where the body reaches a point where you cannot take in any more oxygen but continuing with the activity. At that point, the body undergoes anaerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration, that means in the absence of the oxygen, the body shifts to anaerobic and makes a byproduct. This is called as lactic acid in the muscles. So, which statement about lactic acid is correct? Lactic acid is produced, is a product of anaerobic respiration of the yeast. No, yeast is a microorganism who by anaerobic respiration will make what is called as ethanol needed in the process of alcohol formation or fermentation. Lactic acid builds up in the tissues and can lead to an oxygen debt. Yes, this one is the correct answer. What is an oxygen debt? So, when we are looking at that the activity continued and you kept on doing the work, but the oxygen was not enough, that much of oxygen is in the depth in the body and you need to return it. So after an activity, the person is still panting, breathing very high. The oxygen uptake or the breathing rate is very high, which is to repay the oxygen debt which was created during the activity. So your answer is 23rd. Moving to the 24th part, we are looking at the areas of X, Y, and Z. So the parts of the kidney that we identify, the outer part is called as the cortex, which is labeled as the X. Then the next part that we are looking at is the uh, Z part, which is called as the medulla. This part that you can see over here, this is called as the pelvis. Okay, and the last part that you're looking in the labeling, this part is the ureter. So now let's match. What are the areas X, Y, and Z? We said the X is the cortex, so we are looking at only these two options now. Okay, so the X is the cortex, then the Y is the ureter. So your answer, as you can see, is going to be B. Okay. The structure listed are a part of the nervous system: brain, effector, receptor, and the relay neuron. For this, we need to remember another flowchart. Okay, so the flowchart that we are saying is that there is a stimuli. This stimuli is picked up by a receptor. The receptor will send the message by the sensory neuron to the central nervous system, which will be the brain or the spinal cord. From here, it moves to what is your motor neuron. And from the motor neuron, it will go to the effector. There are two effectors of the motor neuron. It will be the muscle or the gland. Okay, so In a reflex arc, which structures are connected to the motor neuron by the synapse? So your answer, motor neuron is connected here to the relay neuron because it is a reflex arc. For the reflex arc in the central nervous system, it will be the relay neuron. So the answer is going to be relay neuron and the effector. So your answer is 2 and 4. So your answer is going to be C. Okay. Moving ahead again, we are looking at the 26th. Which process is a response of the body that is a part of the negative feedback process? Now, what are we looking about the negative feedback process? The body always tries to maintain something which is called as a set point. Any deviation from the set point a little bit here and there, the body can adjust. Okay, but if there is more changes, the body will require for help. So how does these changes go about? This is going about by the process of negative feedback, the action to bring back to its original position. So which process is a response of the body that are part of negative feedback? Release of insulin in response to low blood glucose. Insulin will be released when there is going to be high blood glucose, not low. Okay. Now, next is vasoconstriction. So, vasoconstriction, as we understand, is a response to an increase in the blood temperature, is an increase in the blood temperature. So basically, vasodilation will increase when the temperature increases. What do I understand by the term vasodilation? So if we are looking at the structure of the skin, okay, more blood vessels come here to the surface and the sweat is given out in conditions of hot climate. In conditions of colder climate, the blood vessels move away from the surface of the skin so that the temperature is maintained inside. Okay, so your vasoconstriction occurs during cold and vasodilation occurs during hot. Synthesis of glycogen in response to increased blood glucose concentration. Okay, so when the blood glucose concentration increases in the body, the insulin is going to be secreted by the pancreas, which in the liver will convert this excess glucose to glycogen. Okay, so your answer here is going to be C. Coming to the 27th question, which row shows the pupil reflex in the bright light? So as we remember that the pupil reflex is controlled by what is called as the radial muscles and the circular muscles. So you can see in this diagram over here, in the dim light, the radial muscles will contract and the circular muscles will relax. Okay, and what will happen? The pupil is going to be dilated. In the bright light, as we can see that the circular muscles contract and the radial will relax and the pupil is going to be constricted. You can see the difference in the size of the two pupils to give you a fair idea about what really happens. So going back to the question paper again. 27th question, we are looking at the pupil reflex in the bright light. As we just saw over here, in the bright light, the pupil is going to be contracted. So, pupil is going to be contracted. So, we are going to eliminate these two ones. Okay, and your answer is going to be B. Pupil circular muscles contract, radial muscles relax, and the size of the pupil is going to be smaller. Now, 28th question. A seed is placed and grown on a rotating disc. The seed is pinned to constantly rotating disc. Okay. Now what happens when this disc is moving in a circular action? Basically, phototropism or gravitropism does not occur because At any point, any of these two things are not working. Okay, response to light is phototropism, response to gravity is gravitropism. Okay, a shoot will always have positive phototropism and negative gravitropism. Similar conditions, we are looking at the root. The root will always have positive gravitropism and negative phototropism. So, which diagram shows the appearance of the seedling shoot after 7 days? Since it has been constantly been rotating, nor gravity nor photos light is going to be identified, and because of that, the answer is going to be A. It will not move in any direction. Moving to the 29th question. So the 29th question, commercial plant growers use asexual reproduction to grow coffee plants. The word is asexual, that means no gametes are produced. It does not require two parents. And we are talking about that it will make identical copies. Making identical copies or the process of reproduction. So identical copies and fast reproduction. These are the two main things why for commercial plants they require asexual reproduction. The same type of crop is in demand, so you need to produce the same one again. What is the disadvantage of the asexual reproduction? Like we said, there are no gametes involved. Since there are no gametes involved, there is going to be no variation. And because of that, even if one plant is affected by a disease, the whole lot is going to be affected and it is going to be a huge loss for the plant grower, right? So the disadvantage is the question which is the disadvantage is what is asked over here. So here the disadvantage that we are looking at, all plants are equally susceptible to the same disease. So your answer is going to be D. 30th. Which statement about the human immunodeficiency virus is correct? As we understand the word, HIV causes a disease which is called as AIDS. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Okay, so as we understand that this is going to affect the immune system of our body, okay, and because of that, the antibodies will either be too weak or they will not be made at all. Okay, so we are talking about that weak immune system. So which statement about human immunodeficiency is correct? Antibodies cannot be made. We are not sure at which stage of this it is, so it may be slower process. HIV infections can be treated by antibiotics, which is not correct because antibiotics can work on the bacteria. But since HIV is a virus, it cannot work. Why so? Because the antibiotics work on the cell wall. And as we know the structure, the viruses have a protein coat, and because of that, they cannot be worked upon. So antibiotics, they do not have any cell wall to target them. HIV destroys the lymphocytes. This is definitely true, and because of that, the antibodies will not be made, okay, or they will be made slower or they will be made less. So your main keyword over here is that the HIV destroys the lymphocytes because it is an immune deficiency syndrome. Okay, coming to the 31st. Which statement about a diploid human cell is correct? So here we are looking at the word diploid. Diploid means 2n. Okay, so diploid as in we are looking at 46 number of chromosomes. That is what a human cell has. What is less? What is less than diploid? So we are looking at the word haploid. Okay, so haploid is the word where we are looking at n, which is present in a gamete. Okay, so which statement about the diploid human cell is correct? We are looking at the 31st one. There are 22 chromosomes plus and X or a Y, which will make it as 23. But we are looking at the word diploid. So we are looking at the target 46. B answer, there are 22 pairs of chromosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. As we understand the word pairs, pairs means 44 and 2 sex chromosomes, which will be either XX or it will be XY. So 44, 45 and 46. So your answer for the 31st question has to be B. Okay. Now, 32nd question. This comes from the inheritance chapter. The gene for hemophilia is found on the X chromosome. So what we understand is that it is a sex-linked disorder. That means we are trying to say that there is a very high chance that the male will suffer from this disease and the woman will just be a carrier. Hemophilia is a condition where the body fails to undergo the process of clotting. In the pedigree diagram, the dominant allele is shown as a capital H. So a dominant is capital H and the recessive allele. What do I understand by the term allele? Allele means alternative forms. Okay, so alleles means alternative form. So if I'm looking at an information of eyes, the alleles for eyes or the options that I can have for an eye color would be black, brown, blue, gray. So these are called as alleles. Now, what is the probability of a child M having hemophilia? For any questions ever given like this, it is always better to make a Punnett square. Okay, so looking at the Punnett square formation over here, we are looking at capital H, small h. Okay, it's a sex-linked disorder, so we need to write the X and the Y as well. So we are looking at capital H, small h and capital HY. Sorry. Okay, so we are looking at capital H and we are looking at Y. So we are going to look for the uh, probability of an M. So M is a male. So we are going to look at only these two bottom options. So it is going to be X capital HY and X small hy. Okay, so here we are talking about is that what is the probability of the male child having hemophilia. Okay, so your answer for the 32nd question is going to be C. Now you will say it is 1 in 4 chance. Why are you saying C? But here when we are looking at the ratio of the boy or a male offspring, there is only one half of the option that it is going to be a affected child. Okay, so the child suffering from hemophilia is only 0.50. What is the adaptive feature of xerophytes? Okay, so who are xerophytes? Xerophytes, as we can understand, these are the desert plants. So xerophytes are desert plants. So look at the diagram provided over here. So these are the adaptations of a desert plant. They have large stems to store water. Then they have widespread root system that can collect water easily because there is always a scarcity of water. They have thick waxy skin to reduce the rate of transpiration, and they have got spines on their body, that is instead of leaves, so that they can reduce the rate of transpiration and also protect them from the predators. So these are the characteristics or adaptations of a xerophyte. Okay, so what are the adaptive features of the xerophytes? As we just saw, the xerophyte, something of the cacti family. Okay, their leaves have got a thick cuticle is your answer. Next question. The graph shows the growth of the bacterial population. Which section represents the exponential or the log phase? For this, we need to understand the 4 stages of the population graph. The first stage, as we can see, is called as the lag phase. The population is still settling or it is reaching to a reproductive stage and the rate of growth of the population is very slow. Second stage that we are looking at, this is called as the log or the exponential phase. It is growing at a very high rate, or we can say that the birth rate exceeds the death rate. Okay. Next, we are looking to the C. The C is where we are understanding the birth rate is equal to the death rate. This is called as the stationary phase. And the last, as we can see, is the phase where the death rate is more than the birth rate, and this phase is called as the death phase. So they are asking you which is the phase, which is the exponential phase. So your answer is going to be B. 35th answer. The species of insects usually has pale colored wings. Usually pale colored keyword. This helps them to camouflage. That means they are not visible by the predators. A few of these insects in the species have darker colored wings. We can understand that it is because of this they can be easily visible to the predators. So their numbers will be low. This whole sentence is giving you an idea of the process that they are talking about, natural selection, which is a part of the Darwin's theory of evolution. After the number of years, the tree trunks become darker in color due to environmental changes. So now the scenario changes and the dark ones are going to camouflage and the lighter ones or the pale colored ones are going to be visible. The insects with dark colored wings become more common with the insects than the pale colored species. Which process causes the change in the population of insects with the dark colored wings? So the 35th answer we are looking at C, natural selection. It is an evolution theory given by Darwin. Okay. Coming to the very interesting question or very important part of the portion, this is the nitrogen cycle. Okay, nitrogen cycle, as we can understand, it occurs by the process of atmospheric nitrogen, which is in the N2 form. In this form, it cannot be utilized by the body. So we have seen in the chapter of respiration, you inhale 78% nitrogen and you exhale 78% nitrogen again. No usage from here. So from here, what happens is that it needs to be fixed in the soil in a specific process. Okay, so which processes are carried out by the bacteria is what they are asking. Here we are looking at the atmospheric nitrogen is coming here in the form of ammonium. So ammonium basically is done by the help of the fixing bacteria. Okay, and it is converted to nitrates. Okay, so this is the one place where the microorganisms will be used. The nitrates, it is taken up into proteins and amino acids in the plants. Okay, this process, as we can understand that the nutrients are entering into the plants, this is an active transport process. It does not require microorganisms. Okay, for the fixing over here, yes, it required. So, one process, two process. Okay, then the third, then the fourth. Now, proteins and amino acids are entering into the animal. This process is called as nutrition. For nutrition, again, you do not require microorganisms. Then proteins and amino acids in the animals are converted to urea. For urea, we are looking at the process occurring in the liver of the body. So again, you do not require microorganisms. Death and decomposition is occurring and again it is getting converted to ammonium. So yes, here again you are looking at the bacteria's involvement. Okay, for converting it into ammonia, the process is called as decomposition. Okay, so 3, and we are looking at ammonium to atmospheric nitrogen. So in cases of absence of oxygen, denitrifying bacteria are going to work and convert the nitrates or ammonium back into atmospheric nitrogen. So this is one more place where you will require the use of denitrifying bacteria. So the answer for the 36th question should be D. 30. Moving to the 37th question, we are looking at what is the characteristic of the bacteria that makes them useful in genetic engineering. So, we look at the diagram of the bacteria over here. In this diagram, as you can see, that the bacteria has got this genetic material which is not enclosed in the nuclear membrane. They are called as the prokaryotes, and here you can identify there is an extra strand of DNA which is called as the plasmid. This plasmid can be removed and it can be used for genetic engineering. So, what is the what is the characteristic of the bacteria that makes them useful in genetic engineering? So, the answer for here is that it contains plasmids which can be transferred between the cells. 38. What is the useful product of anaerobic respiration in the manufacture of the bread? So we are again looking at the word anaerobic, means in the absence of oxygen. So in the absence of oxygen, I just mentioned earlier that the yeast makes what is called as alcohol, okay, which is ethanol, and it also makes carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide is the one which will make the bread soft and fluffy, which is absolutely needed. Nobody likes to prefer to eat a hard bread which is very chewy. That is exactly what you see when you're trying to eat a whole meal bread. Okay, it's really very chewy. It's not very soft. So if you are not on a specific weight loss diet or a low calorie diet and you prefer to eat the normal bread, in that condition we are looking at the option should be 38A, because ethanol is going to be evaporated. No doubt ethanol is also made, but it is going to be evaporated. Okay, so it does not really help anything in the bread, but we are looking at the carbon dioxide, very important for making it soft and fluffy. Moving to the why, what are the reasons why species become endangered? So species become endangered, that means they are very close to the extinction. Extinction means they will completely be wiped off. There'll be no more reproduction and no more species of their types. So what are the reasons why species become endangered? So habitat destruction, obviously, where we are clearing the forest and making place for new factories, or we are talking about roads and houses, etc. Hunting, okay, hunting is very important here, that you are hunting at them for tusks, skins, etc. And then again you are introducing new species where the competition increases, and because of that they will have lesser food to eat, or habitat which is not very conducive. So here your answer is going to be A. 48. If the nitrate concentration in the lake increases, fish may die due to events listed. The key word over here we are talking about is eutrophication. Okay, so in eutrophication, which sequence of events will lead to the death of the fish? So we are looking at increased aerobic respiration by the decomposers, which comes later, increased decomposition of the dead producers, increased growth of the producers, and reduction in the dissolved oxygen. So coming to the arranging of this particular sequence, we are going to start first with the third one. So the third one is increased growth of producers where the competition increases, then the increased decomposition of the dead producers. Then we are looking at increased aerobic respiration by the decomposers, and lastly we are coming to the uh, reduction in the dissolved oxygen, which is going to cause a BOD, biological oxygen demand, and because of which the fishes are going to die. So your answer is going to be C. If you like the explanation of this, please do like, subscribe, and attend more videos of 0610 explained. Thank you.